Hi everyone. So today I'm going to in some of the previous slides when I talked about and some of the sessions I talked about AI agent architecture. So I'll just start with that and then we will talk about MCP servers in this session. So if you see an AI agent, the very good example is AWS Bedrock. You can explore it in the AWS console. So that's one of the very famous agent, and it uses the LLMs. It has multiple options. You can pick whichever you want. And in one of my sessions earlier, I had shown the how to connect to it and how to set up a query. And then on the back end, the data, it can be in a database, it can be in S3 bucket, it can be as a file or a knowledge base, or it can be you can actually call an API and get the data, and then it shows the output. So this is the initial architecture. But if you must have heard a lot about MCP servers, so let's talk where does MCP fit into this. So MCP, what is the full form, is Model Context Protocol. So basically it is something like it's like a it's a capability, or it's kind of you can say a software, a piece of software, which sits between your AI agent. So for example, if your AI agent is Bedrock, so it sits between that and any external endpoints. So the what it does, it basically it enables it's kind of a intermediary between the AI agent and any external system. The external system can be an API endpoint, so you can make API calls, for example, to Jira or Snow, and then get the result. And so in this case, the first MCP server will interpret the result and then present it back to the AI agent. And then you can have multiple MCP servers, right? Another next one can actually read the database, or it can read the files from the knowledge base, and then it can perform the actions that are required, and then it can send it back to the AI agent. So multiple servers can work on for different so what is the need for MCP? Because in the previous we saw that we didn't have an MCP. So somehow, so the MCPs became very popular, and because they are kind of helping to gather all the data from outside endpoints S3, and then they are kind of compiling that and then sending it back to the AI agent. So it makes the result and the work of AI agent even more efficient. And there is also something called as MCP inspector or MCP client. So this is kind of, if you're testing an MCP server, you can use the inspector to run commands. So that's how, so it's basically, as you see, right, it's a client server architecture. So you have a server which can talk to on the back end, and then you have a client which will be like connecting to the server, um, and it can talk to any of the external servers. So now let me so if you have explored, let's explore some of the MCP servers. So if you see Docker Hub, right? So let's go to Docker Hub. So in the Docker Hub, there is a section now for AI models, and there are a section for MCP servers. So if we look at the MCP servers, you see there are already so many of them are available, just like Docker provided images, and you can just pull an image, and do a Docker run. In this case, it provides a list of MCP servers which are already available. So like you have something for Docker Hub. There is DuckDuckGo, which is basically a web search capability. Docker Hub is basically, it's essentially something if you want to check anything about related to the Docker images, it can do that. And then you have some Git and GitHub also. So let's look at the Docker Hub piece. So what is in this MCP server? So it says so as but you can, so these are the use cases, like why would you need it. So you can ask any kind of question. So once you set it up, and then let's say we have an MCP server, and then we have an MCP inspector. So from the inspector, which is the client, we can say, okay, what is the latest tag on a repo, or check what is the repository is there or not, check if their API is using Docker hardened images and any other related stuff. So I Docker hardened images is another topic that I will be covering. So this is basically something as giving hardened images, base images, where there will be no vulnerabilities and pretty slim packages. So in one of my earlier sessions, I did cover another product called ChainGuard, which does the same thing. So Docker hardened images is similar, but it has been released as part from Docker itself. So we'll talk about it in the future, some of the future sessions. So let me go to the MCP server. So to install the MCP server, it's simple. We can say Docker MCP server enabled. So you have to have Docker desktop running. So in my case, I have Docker desktop running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add to the Docker desktop, and it will have my MCP server running, and then we will have a um, client which will be MCP inspector, and we'll try to connect to the MCP server. So I am in Docker Hub and hub.docker.com. I had to log in, and also I have a Docker desktop, so I have to log into the Docker desktop, and then I'm going to try to add the desktop over here. So it will take a couple of minutes, and then but meanwhile I can also go to my uh, let me go to the and try to do it manually. So while it is installing, let's go over the other stuff that they have. So if you see in the Docker Hub, there were some other tools. So let me go back. So where is the Docker, the base one? Okay, so this is the one, right? So this is a bunch of MCP servers. So they have something another one for GitHub official. So a lot of you, as developers, we use GitHub a lot. So why would you need an MCP server sitting that will talk to GitHub? But basically, that MCP server is basically going to make API calls to GitHub, and then it can you can ask stuff like, what is the latest code, what are the or add a comment into my repo. And then you can also combine it with Copilot. You can create and submit a pull request. You can create a new repo. You can create a new branch. So a lot of stuff that you don't. So the whole purpose of like all this AI that we're talking about is that you don't really need to know the commands. Like for example, if I was earlier going and doing git pull or git checkout dash b, I was creating a branch like that, but I don't need all of that. So you don't need the knowledge of actually hardcore knowledge of a developer. So if these companies, they're providing us MCP servers, basically it's enabling us to still do the work, but without getting into like how you would do it. So that is a very good thing, that it is basically enabling the developers to do more thinking and also finding solutions and write more innovative products without going into the detail of how I'm going to do it. So that kind of adds the basic, like the it's a very good advantage, I think. That's my opinion, for the developers. Similarly, like a lot of you, if somebody has used Copilot, it's not going to replace the work, but it's basically helping us. So the stuff that if I know I have a very good design, if I have a solid design, then I can simply take the help. So there are some of the other stuff that is coming. It's becoming very popular. Is like Claude Desktop. Claude Desktop is basically this is an MCP server for. But what is Claude Desktop? Is basically let's start look at it. It's becoming very popular because it's something is giving a developer an environment to build. Build a product without getting into the details of Docker, without getting the details of AWS or CLI, sorry, the AWS CLI or Git and stuff like that. So that is one of the good things. Similarly, AWS released an MCP server. So instead of learning all that skill, you can actually now focus on the solutions. So this is a very popular one. I'm going to actually have a separate session, completely go over Claude and then install it and show how. So this is for Mac OS. So once I install it, then I will go over this. And in the next session, I will continue first on the MCP setup, and then we'll do Claude, and then we'll also do a separate on the Docker hardened images.